Readers,
reviewers,
countrymen,
lend us your ears. Welcome back to the Brothers Gwynne channel. We're here showing our reads of January.
So first of all, this month I listened to on Audible Ben Aronovich's Rivers of London. Now, my dad's been telling me for years to pick this series up, and so far I'm absolutely loving it. The first book in the Rivers of London, all about a police officer in the Met in London, Peter Grant, and it starts off with him encountering a ghost over a murdered body. Okay, and I absolutely love how Peter's journey then takes him through London, and he sees kind of the underground movement, a little bit like Neverwhere kind of thing. There's a whole fantasy realm within it, and there's creatures, there's vampires, all sorts. There's wizards, and there's lots of great references. So really enjoyed this, highly recommended.
And you've got me over to that side, so I'll be reading Rivers of London next month. So now I have this as my first read. This is something for my English literature studies. It's Our Country's Good by Timberlake Burton Baker. Really brilliant play. So it's set in the 1780s, a long time ago, and it's about the first convicts to be taken to Australia. And the dialogue is very witty, but there's some very serious themes as well, and I really enjoyed it.
And my second book of the month was a book called The Face of Battle by John Keegan. And now this was a study of the battles of Agincourt, Waterloo and the Somme. Now what John Keegan does is he writes about how the everyday soldier would see battle. Not written from the tactics point of view, it's written from the point of view of soldiers actually in the thick of it. And I really love his portrayal of these characters, giving us all sorts of kind of features of what the battles really threw at these individual people within all of these scenarios. So he gives kind of a historical breakdown of Agincourt, Waterloo and the Somme, and then he speaks about how it would have actually affected the everyday soldier. And it's quite brutal, it's harrowing, definitely. It's well worth a read. I really enjoyed this, and his writing style, I just felt I came away from this book feeling like I had learned so much about the human condition, as well as what scenarios these people were actually stressed under. So really highly recommended. And for my next read of the month was a graphic novel called Reckless by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. Now I really enjoyed this. It's set in 1980s Los Angeles. We can see the artwork is stunning already. And this is a really good representation of what's actually in the pages. I did enjoy this. It was, humorous at times. It was really violent at times. It was quite poignant at other times as well. The main character was a good point of view, and I liked the whole arc. I think sometimes maybe the author couldn't settle on the right tone. Sometimes they were trying to be a little bit too funny when kind of they could have chosen their moments to hit home with emotional moments. But I really enjoyed this. I liked the style of storytelling, and the artwork was really nice.
And then I have The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman, which you actually listened to this month as well. Yep. So we listened to the audio version narrated by Neil Gaiman himself, and I'm not sure if you thought the same, but I thought his narration was just perfect for the story. Wonderful. I think what he brought to it was just this melancholic tone. That it really sounded like the world did weigh on his shoulders. Yeah. The Ocean at the End of the Lane, it's a beautiful story about essentially a boy growing into adulthood and losing his innocence. So I'm sure we'll be doing a video with more detail on Neil Gaiman's books in the future, but that's what I thought. Did you think?
Yeah, definitely. It was a lovely, tender story. Really, there's kind of a sad vein throughout. But listening to Neil Gaiman's narration of it just I gave it another layer. Yeah, I think, and he did a brilliant job. I mean, what a voice he has as well.
Oh,
and I think it must be nice for him to be able to read his own book off exactly the way he wrote it. Yeah, sometimes obviously narrators might interpret things in different ways, but he knows exactly how he wrote it. So I really enjoyed it. Definitely very sad though.
So back over to Ed. What was your next read of the month?
My next read was another graphic novel called Saga, Volume 1. Now, this is kind of probably one of the most popular fantasy graphic novels at the moment. You can see it's very quirky.
Crazy. It looks crazy.
Yeah, it was absolutely just mind-blowing. It was, mind-boggling as well. But I really enjoyed this. The artwork is great. The worlds, I say worlds because it's it's definitely sci-fi inspired as well. Lots of different planets and environments, but it was absolutely brilliant. The relationship between the two main characters, looking after their baby, which we can see here, kind of drove the story, drove the plot, and then you had some other characters as well. But it was a really nice adventure, funny as well. Definitely recommended. I'm looking forward to carrying this series on. I think there's 8 all in all.
That'll keep you busy.
Yeah, exactly. But they're brilliant. And now for my next book of the month was A Ritual of Bone by Lee Conley. Now, I really, really enjoyed this. I don't usually read much fantasy about zombies, but I really enjoyed how Lee Conley did it. It felt a little bit like a Skyrim kind of environment with the Nords, that kind of thing. And throw some zombies in there. Obviously, the cover's really cool. I listened to it on Audible, and I think the narrator, R.J. Bailey, did a really good job. And Lee Conley's writing is really easygoing. It's not like you're not really working to try and keep up with everything that's going on. He wrote the point of views really well. I enjoyed quite a few of the characters, and I'm really looking forward to listening to the next one as well. So good job, Lee.
So what was the tone really like with it? Was it quite funny? Was it quite dark?
There was humorous moments. I think it was quite dark. It definitely feels like a little bit grimdark, although the characters don't feel like you can't get behind them. I definitely got behind the characters, and obviously when it's zombies, it's not quite as, the bad people aren't going to be as effective as like a Thanos kind of character. But you've got this kind of unwavering dread through the whole of the book, and you just know what's coming.
A bit like I Am Legend.
Yeah,
maybe.
exactly. Okay. Or kind of like in Game of Thrones with the White Walkers. You know that's on its way, and it's just seeing how it affects the characters. Lee definitely did a really good job. So well done, Lee. Thank you very much. Looking forward to carrying it on next month.
So my next read of the month was Molelanders by Daniel Defoe. So this is another book I've been reading for my English studies. So this is the author of Robinson Crusoe. And Molelanders was a good read. I enjoyed it. It didn't quite have the same enticement in the prose that Robinson Crusoe does. It doesn't drag you along the story, I felt. It might just be me, but I felt it was a bit drier, a bit slower pace. It follows the heroine by the name of Molelanders. It's quite a sad story of how she's exploited, and because of her innocence that she falls into a lot of grisly situations. But I'll talk more in detail about this in a future video, probably. But it was a good read. I'd give it 3.5 stars, and that was Molelanders.
Thank you, Will. And over to my next read was The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. Now, I listened to this on Audible, and the narration was by Stephen Fry, who, I don't need to say, is a brilliant narrator. Absolutely fantastic. He really brought it to life. I loved the first half of this book. I loved all the different characters. Big shout out to Marvin, the depressed robot.
That sounds interesting. I've not read it, but
yeah, exactly.
He sounds like an interesting character.
Yeah, he definitely was, and I was laughing so many times. I think the ending, the author didn't quite stick the landing for me, but I still enjoyed it nevertheless, and I'll definitely carry on reading or listening to Stephen Fry's great narrations in this world. I believe there's a film actually of this with Martin Freeman in, which I definitely need to watch. But like I said, I enjoyed it, but not quite as much as lots of other people have, which I think is a shame for me. Obviously, there are 50 million copies sold, as it says on the front, so I think I'm one of the odd ones out.
Pretty popular.
Which is going to happen.
And another one of your reads, Ed, was...
Now, this one here was Stephen Erickson's Gardens of the Moon, Book 1 of the Malazan. Wow. That's all I can say. Wow. I think I said on my Goodreads review, this was intense. And
yeah.
To say
I remember
the least,
asking you how it was going. You said that there's some incredible scenes, but you said you just have no idea what is going on most of the time. But it sounds like it's meant to be like that.
Yeah, definitely. Stephen Erickson's done a good job. I think this is what he intended, to throw the reader in there without any hand-holding, no spoon-feeding whatsoever. But, by the end of it, I really, really, really enjoyed this. I think I gave it 4 stars on Goodreads. There were some of the greatest moments in fantasy I've ever read. And then in between it, there was a lot of extra stuff which I felt I was really working to try and understand lots of it. Although I am part of a Discord, Mike Book Reviews Discord, who they're doing a read along, so I'm following along with the read along. That really helped me, talking to some Malazan veterans and watching some YouTube videos as well, talking, breaking down some of the chapters, some of the books. It's split up into quite a few different sections, different books. But I really enjoyed it. The ending was epic, and I think book 2 basically has only 2 of the characters in, so that'll be another change. Something, yeah, exactly. It will be an intense journey, but I'm definitely looking forward to carrying on my journey, my walk through the Malazan.
So next up, I have King Richard III by William Shakespeare. I'm not sure why they made that the cover. There's many cooler pictures on the inside.
Yeah, it doesn't inspire you very much.
Yeah, it doesn't really deliver the tone of Richard III, which is this Machiavellian figure. This is possibly my favourite play I've read by Shakespeare. I just love the character of King Richard III. Well, love to hate him, really. He's a Machiavellian political figure. I think what was brilliant is, different than many other villains, is everyone knows that he's evil, and everyone knows that he's got his agenda, and they all know it, and yet he somehow still gets one over them most of the time. And it was just very fun and enjoyable to read, and I really enjoyed it.
And my next read was Moon Over Soho by Ben Aronovich. This was book 2 of the Rivers of London series, and I've got to say, this was it just took everything from Rivers of London and amplified it to 10. It really turned the volume up. I absolutely loved it. It's all about jazz. It's all about vampires, and I love jazz. I think it's brilliant. There was lots of brilliant jazz hands. Lots of brilliant references all throughout, and I think Ben Aronovich he just had a really solid foundation in book 1, and just book 2 just really capitalised on everything. Making it absolutely brilliant. I haven't actually visited Soho before, but reading this made me want to, unless there are vampires and other nasty creatures lurking there. So
could be fun.
Yeah, exactly. I've really enjoyed seeing all the jazz kind of bars and that kind of stuff, and it was brilliant. And my next read of the month was Ken Liu's The Paper Menagerie and Other Stories. This is a collection of short stories by the great author Ken Liu, and I absolutely loved reading this. It was absolutely brilliant. There are obviously always short story collections, there are some that you aren't going to really get along with. I enjoyed pretty much every single one of these stories. Some of them were absolutely amazing, and no wonder. I'll just read off what awards he's won actually for the short story The Paper Menagerie, which actually made me cry, which I can't say that too often about many books.
Very rare.
Yeah, and The Paper Menagerie short story actually won the Hugo, the Nebula, and the World Fantasy Awards. And that just is a testament to how
impressive list there.
Yeah, what a brilliant story. I think it's only 15 pages long, but wow, what a story. And Ken Liu's imagination here just runs wild. There are fantasy stories, there are sci-fi stories, lots of it inspired by kind of Asian mythology, that kind of stuff. But I thought it was brilliant. The writing was, lovely at times, thought-provoking, and really, really nice collection of short stories. So I really, really recommend this read.
So next up, I have The Graveyard Book, which did you actually listen to as well this month?
Yes, I did listen to.
So another Neil Gaiman book narrated by him himself, and I think it really showed that his narration for The Ocean at the End of the Lane was specifically for that book. He delivers a completely different tone for The Graveyard Book. It had me laughing out loud. It is so funny. The characters that he creates, they are brilliant.
Yeah.
I read The Graveyard Book quite a few years ago, and I'd forgotten most of the details. I remembered there was a boy named Bod who was raised by ghosts, and there was a man named Jack. And that's all I remembered. So returning to it,
in this book,
Jack is a bad man. But it was brilliant to return to it. As I said earlier, we will be having a separate Neil Gaiman video at some point in the future. I really loved it. His prose, you can't dispute it. It's always amazing.
Yeah.
And in this case, so was the plot, characterization, and everything just fell into a blend of amazingness.
One of the best, I think it has one of the best first chapters of any book I've ever written. How the man Jack is in that house doing his dark deeds.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant. I love how funny it is. I love the narration as well of by Neil Gaiman himself. As a children's book, I think it's absolutely brilliant. As a teacher, I really like to use it in school as well. We quite often go over the first chapter and talk, about his language, but absolutely brilliant. I loved listening to it. I think it's my favourite children's book, or one of them, definitely, and definitely one of my books of the month. Loved it.
And returning to what you said about that opening chapter, I remember my old English teacher said that Neil Gaiman is the king of opening lines.
Yeah, definitely. I can't remember what the opening line for the Graveyard Book is, but it's definitely it definitely hooked me in straight away. What I like about it is, I think he's even said himself that it's heavily inspired by the Jungle Book.
Yeah.
Obviously the title, the Graveyard Book, it's just doing a little bit of a different twist on it, and it's kind of like a short story collection. It feels like, doesn't it? Like adventures of Bod around the graveyard. How he learns to read and all the different characters. It's done in such a Neil Gaiman way, and it's brilliant. Lovely references throughout, and yeah, really enjoyed it.
Go read.
And my next book was George R.R. Martin's A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. Another little bit of a short story collection. 3 short stories in this one about the Knight Dunk and his Squire Egg. I won't provide any more details.
Interesting names there.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a really, really good job of what short stories can actually do. I really enjoyed. Obviously, George R.R. Martin's writing style is really easy to read. It's got lovely prose. But I really liked what happened in the short stories. I really connected with the characters. It felt very different to when I read A Game of Thrones. I haven't actually finished the series yet. Obviously, you can't finish the series yet because George R.R. Martin hasn't finished writing yet.
But you're not up to date.
Yeah,
with the series
exactly.
yet.
But, it felt like a little... Not as adult, not as graphic, kind of a lighter side of Westeros. But I really enjoyed it. I think my favourite short story is the first one, The Hedged Knight. I love how it opened, and the whole concept of this knight who isn't exactly who he seems to be. Going through the world, going into tourneys, that kind of stuff, making friends with princes, it's a really, really good read. Really enjoyed it. And my next read was Elmore Leonard's Get Shorty. Now, I haven't actually seen the film of this. I've heard Elmore Leonard is a king of dialogue, and I completely agree. It is mostly dialogue. There's not that much description, really.
Really?
He does his dialogue really, really well, though. I think I've seen Joe Abercrombie say he's a little bit of an influence for Joe's dialogue. So you can definitely see that here. How short and how concise it is, how every word kind of, it definitely lands and it means something. And also everyone feels so different. I really enjoyed the story. I think it was a little bit slow. The pacing was a little bit off for me. I think it got to the 200 page mark out of 300 pages. And I was just waiting for that final third to kick in. And it still took a while. And the ending was quite short, although it was still quite sweet. I did enjoy it. I definitely will read more Elmore Leonard. But I don't think I'll rush to start any immediately in the future. There won't be bumped up the to-be reads, but I still enjoyed it. Nevertheless, I could definitely see how John Travolta was Chili Palmer, the main character.
Now, this is another book that we both actually listened to an audiobook this month, although we have slightly differing opinions. Yes. The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. So this is the story of Patroclus and Achilles and the tale of Troy, a tale that we all, I think, know. I personally really enjoyed this spin on the story. I thought that Madeline Miller's prose was very easy to read. It wasn't flowery or necessarily impressive in that sense, but it was very easy to read. And combined with the blend of the historical aspect and the political intrigue alongside some of the mythology, you meet centaurs, the gods, and I thought that Miller did a really good job of blending those aspects together. But I think you thought slightly differently.
I agree that she blended lots of the aspects of Greek mythology together. I really liked it. I find with this book, it's a book about the characters, and I didn't like Patroclus. I didn't like Achilles. Really, I couldn't really get behind them. And when you know what's going to happen at the end, you want to love these characters. When I think of tales about a mythological figure, I think of Bernard Cornwell's King Arthur trilogy, and how Arthur wasn't the most likeable person, was he? But he felt so real. You really got behind him. And similar again, it wasn't told from Arthur's point of view. That was told from Derval's point of view, just kind of his right-hand man. And the emotional impact that the end of Bernard Cornwell's Arthur trilogy had compared to this one, The Song of Achilles, I just felt like it couldn't really stand up, compared to it. I know they're obviously very different books. One's about Achilles, one's about King Arthur, but you want the same result. You want you to feel kind of heartbroken at the tragedy, because this is a Greek tragedy. You know, the Iliad is, you know, lots of Greek writers that it was all a tragedy, wasn't it? Really. So I think I still enjoyed it. It was a nice style. There were some brilliant fight scenes. Mostly.
Well, I think it kind of just shows what people would say is the beauty of reading, really. I think we both got very different responses from it. I personally, I understand what you said about Achilles, but I felt attached to Patroclus. So yeah, but I think
I'll definitely read Circe. Read Circe.
I think that Circe is a level up. Whilst I probably enjoy the concept of the Song of Achilles more, I read Circe last year and it was brilliant.
I must say, I don't think the Audible narrator did as good a job as he could have. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I think that
his interpretation might be a little bit different. Maybe it's just me. Maybe compared to what I think. What do you think? Do you like the Audible narration?
I talked a bit about the narration on my review on Goodreads. I said that the slower pace moments, I thought he did really well, but there's parts of this book that you need a fast-paced attention to build. Yeah. And I thought that I've forgotten his name, but I thought his narration was a bit too relaxed at that point.
David Thorpe, I think.
David Thorpe. Yeah, it was very good. I thought it was good narration, solid performance, but it wasn't that level above.
Nothing to blow us out the water.
No, definitely. But still, I really enjoyed this.
And the last book I read this month was Stardust by Neil Gaiman. I haven't actually got a physical copy. Again, we've been on a little bit of an Audible hype with Neil Gaiman. Yeah, definitely a binge. I enjoyed the beginning of Stardust. I think the end... I mean, if you compare it to the film, I think the film, in one of the rare cases, was actually a lot stronger than the book. I did enjoy the whole beginning, and obviously Neil Gaiman's prose is lovely, and the narration, beautiful. But the characters just weren't quite as strong, weren't quite as quirky. The ideas weren't quite as strong and kind of well-rounded in the book as in the film. But still, definitely a Neil Gaiman read is always a good read in my opinion. So definitely recommended. Obviously, if you want to try it, definitely.
Yeah, I've actually read Stardust. I think that what I just felt is I thought, obviously, as Ed said, the prose. Brilliant again. I just thought it wasn't as well structured or fluid as some of his other reads, but it was still worth the read.
And the ending
definitely watch the film.
Yeah, I don't think the ending was nowhere near as strong as the film. It kind of sizzled out. It peaked far. Yeah, it peaked far too early in my opinion. But again, it's Neil Gaiman.
Watch the film, and then you have the best of both worlds.
So our books of the month are. My book was Ben Aronovich's Moon Over Soho. I think this is, I mentioned earlier how much of a brilliant read it is, but I think it was so funny. There were laugh out loud moments. I love jazz. All of the references just enhance my enjoyment that whole much more. And also talking about London, you know, I love visiting London, and you can tell the author knows London really well, and just I loved the tale of it. There were twists at the end that were a lot stronger than the first book, but definitely this is my book of the month. Will, what was yours?
So, my book of the month was The Graveyard Book. We talked quite a lot about it earlier, but I just thought that even though it is a children's book, it's perfectly accessible to adults and equally as enjoyable. As you said with Moon Over Soho, there were laugh out loud moments. I would be walking around the house and I get some weird looks from you.
You just hear William cackling while he's doing the dishwasher, and you think he never laughs when he's doing the dishwasher, so something must be going on.
Yeah, it must be funny to make me laugh in that situation. But The Graveyard Book, as we said earlier, I think that just every single aspect blends together so perfectly. One of my favourite Neil Gaiman reads alongside Neverwhere, probably. I love that book. I'm probably going to give that a reread soon.
Definitely, I think we should do that.
We both had a bit of a Neil Gaiman spree this month, didn't we?
And that's not stopping. That will be continuing.
That will be. You are reading a Neil Gaiman short story collection.
He's got a few short story collections, so I'll dive into them very soon.
I might have to borrow one of them. But anyway, The Graveyard Book. That is my January read of the month.
Thank you for watching our video about what we read in January. We read quite a bunch of books, a whole array.
We certainly did.
I think we definitely took something away from each of them. We really enjoyed talking about these books, and we'd love to talk with you further about them.
Please let us know what your read of January was, and if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe. You can see some further videos. In a week, we'll be talking about what we are aiming to read in February. So if you enjoyed these chats, please return.
Truth and courage.
Truth and courage.